With all due respect to what happened in the Second World War and the Holocaust, we are now in 2010, but do you think that what happened there informs how people feel about Israel and overshadows whether people feel they can or can't be critical of Israel?
No, let's be clear. People can be critical of Israel as they can be of any other state. But what is happening against Israel at the moment is more than criticism. David Cameron went to Turkey and attacked Israel, very knowingly used the term camp, prison camp.
Well, he was talking about the situation in Gaza.
Which is a lie and a very ill-informed comment by him. If Gaza is a prison camp, it's the only one in the world with luxury shopping malls, Olympic-sized swimming pools, with a better standard of living than parts of Turkey. And what's more, may I say, well, the point about this is the following, that he goes to Turkey and says this, and doesn't even mention that Turkey has been illegally occupying part of Cyprus for decades. Now, I just say, if we're going to talk about Israel being treated by different standards, yes, it is treated by different standards. It is attacked by entirely original standards of people who want it destroyed.
Just on the points about Gaza, of course, Mr. Cameron said the situation in Gaza has to change. Humanitarian goods and people must flow in both directions. There is an economic blockade.
No, there's not an economic blockade. This is absolutely ill-informed. There is no economic blockade. Goods flow all the time through the border crossings. And may I say one other thing?
Not
which is
all
this.
The goods they are.
No, you're not allowed to take guns and you're not allowed to take rockets into Gaza because they fire them
concrete.
because they fire them into Israel. Now, one other thing, Egypt has a border with Gaza. Mr. Cameron didn't go to Turkey and say that Egypt should open up its border with Gaza. Why doesn't he talk about Egypt? Because Israel is held by a different standard.
Are the UN and Amnesty International then, are they as misinformed as David Cameron? Because
well, Amnesty International certainly is, yes.
Well, Douglas, hang on, let Deborah make a point.
8 out of 10 Gazans rely on UN handouts for food and the most basic of living standards to be able to actually exist.
You made Gaza sound like a paradise on earth, and I'm not sure that many of the people in there would regard it quite in that way. This issue has got to be resolved. It's almost the last issue that faces Israel throughout its entire history, and it will not be resolved. As people here in Northern Ireland, which is where we are broadcasting from, as people in Northern Ireland know, you don't resolve these issues at the end of a gun. You resolve them round the table. And since Israel is a nation of intelligent, competent, Westernised people, they should take the lead on this.
The Israelis will go around the table. The Israelis have repeatedly said they will sit down at the table. The problem is that Hamas is not just dedicated to a negotiation which they do well out of. Hamas is dedicated in its charter and in its actions to the annihilation of the Jewish state. It's very hard to sit down and negotiate with people who want to annihilate you.
There has to sit down with them.
It's very hard to if you say, what are we going to, are you going to be annihilated a bit?
Look, well, it may be hard, but that's the point at which things start to change. When somebody says, it's hard, but I'm going to do it. That's exactly what people
like. Mr. Cameron should have put some onus on Hamas. He did nothing. He let Hamas off. He went to Turkey, which is currently got a government which has been supporting Hamas, and he went there and he apologised for Hamas. He didn't put any pressure on Hamas.
Surely that is going too far to say that he apologised for Hamas.
If you do not say...
In no sense did David Cameron's comments make a point to apologise for Hamas.
No, of course he did. Because if you don't take accountability for the following, that the people of Gaza have their own future. They have their future in their own hands. If they vote for terrorist groups like Hamas, it's very hard to say what future they have.
I want to talk to Naftali Bennett, because Naftali Bennett is fair to criticise Israel, but the argument from Israel's defenders are that the same criticism does not apply to Hamas. Are they treated equally, and should they be?
I don't think you can just balance it and say they have to be treated equally. It seems, from my point of view, Israel is a remarkable nation. It's been in existence a long time. It is a democratic government, and it has politicians that are tending rather too often to arouse reactions. The quote that you've just... The moment I hear a sentence that says hate, I twitch, right? The Jews have been on the receiving end of hate for thousands of years. Jews should not be trying to practice it, and they should not be promoting that kind of talk.
Let's talk to Deborah, excuse me, because Winnie joins us on the line. Winnie, you think we are too critical of Israel? That didn't sound like Winnie, and enormous apologies. Let's talk to Paul, because he takes the different point. We need to be more critical, Paul?
Yes. The only reason that the Israeli state exists, of course, is because of the American and British point of view, where they wanted a foothold in the Middle East. So, now they've got the foothold, they support them and give them arms and ammunition and money to support that.
Douglas is shaking his head in the studio.
It's so fantastically illiterate as a comment, so fantastically historically inept. Britain was certainly not a country which was desperately trying to create a Jewish state in the region, nor was America. America happens today to dispense all sorts of aid all around the world. The largest recipient of that aid is Pakistan. You do not hear people talking about the Pakistani government saying, on the one hand, should we criticize them, and on the other hand, maybe the Pakistani state has no right to exist. Maybe because it has American aid, it has no right to exist. So maybe the Pakistani people should all just leave the area. Yet that is routine. Yet that is routine when you discuss Israel.
I'm not going to say with respect. This is absolute nonsense. This is complete rubbish, and it doesn't help the cause of the State of Israel. The cause of the State of Israel is promoted, in my view, by decent people trying to do their best, not only for themselves, but for their neighbours. If Israel tried to turn itself into a modern Singapore, another Singapore, a wealthy country that was able to spread its wealth and its benefits around, that absorbed people and made them...
Which it has tried to do.
It not tried to do.
Which it has tried to do. Which every territorial concession, every single territorial concession that Israel has
it's not to do with territory.
Nothing.
It should not be so tied to territory. Again, that's an issue that found its resolution through the Good Friday Agreement here in Ireland. It's not to do with territory, it's to do with people.
And it is to do with whether or not people want to kill you.
I want to bring in some emails here. Simon from Switzerland says, Israel must be held accountable under international law like any other state. Linda says, we justify the terrible treatment of the people of Gaza and Palestine by Israel because of the way the Jews suffered in the war. Israel needs to stop using "look how we suffered" as an excuse. And Susan says the press is very biased in reporting Israeli attacks, but generally failing to mention the daily attacks from Gaza into Israel, a point I think that was made a little bit earlier. Let's talk to Selma James. Selma is from the Anti-Zionist Network, and Selma, you are Jewish yourself, but your argument is that we're not critical enough of Israel.
Look, Israel is occupying Palestine. That's the first thing. Israel is a nuclear state. That's the second. Israel is one of the largest supporter of the producers of arms and has an enormous military presence. Israel broke the boycott of South Africa. Israel has been the friend of every dictator. Israel does not allow families that are mixed Arab and Jewish Israeli to live within Israel. Israel has the laws of apartheid that dominate the whole of the Middle East. Israel is an extension of the U.S. military. It tests weapons. It tested weapons in Gaza on behalf of itself and the U.S. military.
Selma.
If they had 100,000 of those missiles going, it would be nothing as one plane from Israel, and the havoc and the murder, the slaughter.
Selma, I must interrupt there. Selma, a Jewish member of the Anti-Zionist Network.
Sure, I mean, it just goes to show this is a sickness. This obsession with Israel is a sickness.
Well, to be fair, we're obsessed with Israel because that is the subject of the discussion.
But because this discussion comes again, programs like this, the BBC and other organisations do not routinely talk about Turkish human rights abuses. You do not talk about Iranian human rights abuses. You do not talk about the human rights abuses in every single Muslim country in the world.
Two wrongs don't make a right. And I know what she's getting at. My children could settle in Israel as full citizens. My brothers can't. So there are issues like that. But I accept that because that's the tradition. That's the way traditional communities have operated for many centuries.
And that is one of the debates that you can continue.